focus on Liberia. From Cape Mount to Cape Palmas, mountain back to Atlantic Ocean, Obomi Hills to Pocondre, to educate, elevate, and promote. Yeah, focus on Liberia. For Liberia, Liberia. For Liberia, yeah, 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 yeah. From Monday to Sunday. From Monday to Sunday. It's focus on Liberia. Talk about home affairs. Hey. In diaspora. Foreign affairs. Reliable information. History. Talking about culture. Politics. Education. Entertainment. Business. Sports. Advertisement. Articulation. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. Focus on Liberia. From Monday to Sunday. Focus.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Focus on Liberia. This is Roundtable Africa, where we discuss issues about Africa, the entire continent. We examine the forces shaping democracy across Africa. Tonight, we turn our focus to Tanzania, a nation once hailed for its stability, now gripped by unrest following a presidential elections marked by controversy, violence, and silence from key regional actors. President Samia Hassan, re-elections with over 97% of the vote, has sparked outrage, with opposition leaders barred, protests erupting, and hundreds reportedly killed. What went wrong? What does this mean for democracy in East Africa and even Africa as a whole? And where do regional bodies and neighbors like Uganda stand in the moment of reckoning? Joining us, I have Focus on Liberia political analyst, Mr. Mohamed Sherif, a proud product of WAPO Institute, all the way from God's back in Kilipo, Kanwiken. Mr. Sherif, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dennis. It's great to be here and to discuss these issues.
Right. The last time we were talking about Cote d'Ivoire. Now we're talking about Cameroon. There's a Cote d'Ivoire is in the pipeline. Now it's Cameroon. Is Africa on fire? What is changing here?
Yeah. So last time we discussed Cameroon and what is going on there in that Central African country. Tonight we are going to discuss Tanzania and what is going on in that country. And so to set some backdrop, our mission, as I said, one of our missions is to inform and educate the Liberian people and all African people, quite honestly, to these issues, because, you know, education is power. And it is our hope
in Tanzania right now is not just an
it is our hope that by doing this, we will share knowledge and people will understand what's going on in other areas, again, as precautionary tales. So, you know, just to set the groundwork for this, Tanzania is a very important country. Tanzania is located in East Africa. Dennis, Tanzania, as you know from your early history classes, Tanzania is the home to the Serengeti Park, one of the largest wildlife sanctuary in the world. Tanzania is also home to Mount Kilimanjaro, which is the highest mountain in the world. And so this is a country that we are about to talk about. So Tanzania is the union of mainland Tanganyika and the island nation of Zanzibar. So how did this happen? The Germans controlled Tanganyika for about 40 years. We're talking 1880 and towards the 1920. And they, so when the Germans after World War One left and were defeated, Tanganyika was turned over to the British. So it became a British colony. Meanwhile, Tanganyika, the island of Zanzibar, was already under the British. So fast forward in 1961, Tanganyika gained independence under the charismatic independence leader, Julius Nyerere. I'm going to say it the way the Swahili say it. We say Nyerere in most parts of the world, but it's Nyerere. It's a Swahili word. So it's a Swahili name. So he gained independence for Tanganyika in 1961, became the first president of Tanganyika. Meanwhile, the island nation of Zanzibar, the island protectorate of Zanzibar, gained its independence from Britain in 1964. So in 1964, the British relinquished Zanzibar, and Zanzibar became independent. Shortly after independence, there was an election in Zanzibar, and that election took place, I believe, in 1964, early 1964. The election didn't go well, and the Afro-Shirazi Party, which was, a party by African nationalists, overthrew the monarchy, because at this point now it's monarchy. The Sultan, the ruling elite, the Sultan and members of his cabinet were Arabs, and the African nationalists overthrew the Sultan in a violent revolution. And the Afro-Shirazi Party took over Zanzibar, the independent nation of Zanzibar. Shortly thereafter, in April 1964, Tanganyika and Zanzibar merged to form the United Republic of Tanzania. There were two separate parties, the Afro-Shirazi Party of Zanzibar and the African Union, the Tanganyika African National Union, which Mr. Nyerere headed, the TANU, it was called the TANU, the Tanganyika African National Union Party. These two parties merged in 1977 and formed one political party with Mr. Nyerere as the leader of that party. And that party that was formed as a coalescence of the Afro-Shirazi Party and TANU is called the Chama cha Mapinduzi. The Chama cha Mapinduzi in Swahili means the Party of the Revolution. And since 1977, it's the Chama cha Mapinduzi, or CCM, that has been in power in the United Republic of Tanzania. Julius Nyerere ruled Tanzania for several years. He relinquished power in 1985. His successors then, when the wind of change was blowing through, the wind of democratic change was blowing through Africa in the early 90s. Tanzania was also impacted by that. And, the Tanzanian government reformed and introduced multi-party democracy. There's a lot that Mr. Nyerere did that we will get into later on. I want to push forward a little bit now to the current reality that we have. So,
Right.
Nyerere resigned in 1985, and his successors introduced multi-party democracy around 1992, 1995. One of those successes after Nyerere, post-Nyerere president was John Magufuli. John Magufuli was elected in 2015, something like that. I think it's in 2015, and 6 years later, Magufuli passed away, and he was succeeded by Samia Suluhu Hassan, the first woman president of the United Republic of Tanzania. Just recently, on the 29th of October, there was an election in which was marred by violence, as you stated in your intro, intimidation, repression of the opposition. Ms. Suluhu Hassan is claiming to have won 98% of the total votes. Ms. Suluhu Hassan is claiming the Electoral Commission, which is handpicked by Ms. Suluhu Hassan, is claiming that our voter turnout was 87%. Tanzania has a population of 70 million people. The registered voters are 37 million. We all saw the pictures of the protests and the burnings, the ballots that were burned, the chaos that ensued. And many human rights advocates, the human rights community organizations are saying that, the violence is unprecedented in Tanzania at this time. This has been a peaceful country. Tanzania has been hailed as an oasis of peace in that region. And so now that innocence, that calmness, that civility has been shattered by a dictator in the person of Samia Suluhu Hassan, who succeeded John Magufuli in 2021. Dennis, at this time, the main opposition leader, Tunde Lissu, of the Chadema party, is in jail. Another opposition leader of the ACT, Wazalendo, was barred. He went to the High Court, which is the Supreme Court of Tanzania. The court overturned his exclusion. The Elections Commission then came back a few months later and banned him again. So he was barred. So basically, Suluhu Hassan, if you will, cleared the field for her to win this election. This election was neither free nor fair. This is very troubling for the region. This is very troubling for Africa.
Thank you, Mr. Sherif. Again, I want to welcome all our viewers to focus on Liberia. We do it like no other since the fall of the Malian Empire. And Mr. Sherif gave us a beautiful background, even about that piece of land. I have some friends who visit and say, oh man, the place is so beautiful. In some chat room, they are talking about the people from Tanzania. They say they are laid back people. But let me play for you a clip after the elections. Let's see what's going on to set the stage, to give people an idea what is going on right now in Tanzania. Oh. If you can unmute. All right, hold on. Yeah, let me look for that video.
President Samia Suluhu has decided to take Tanzania down into the
right now is not just an election. It is a systematic dismantling of democracy, a brazen theft of the people's voice, and yet another reminder that the struggle for true liberation in Africa is far from over. As Tanzanians cast their ballots on Wednesday, October 29th, 2025, the main opposition leaders had already been barred from running, setting the stage for what many are now calling a complete mockery of the democratic process. Let me be clear from the outset. President Samia Suluhu Hassan's two biggest challengers were excluded from the race, And the sheer audacity of what followed has shocked even the most cynical observers of African politics. Early results announced through state television showed President Hassan garnering 96.99% of votes in 8 out of 272 constituencies. 96.99%. My brothers and sisters, even in the most popular of leaderships, even in the most united of nations, such numbers don't exist in genuine democratic contests. They exist only in the realm of orchestrated theatre, in the world of predetermined outcomes.
Decided to take Tanzania down into the ashes and of course into the mouths of the dogs, a country that has actually been described as the most tranquil nation in Africa, East and Central Africa.
The border town of Namanga witnessed violent unrest, with Kenyans alleging that the Tanzanian police targeted them. The police allegedly lobbed tear gas canisters across the border and fired live ammunition. The videos from the area showed protesters scattering in panic as tear gas and echoes of gunshots filled the air, leaving behind the injured person they were carrying. Later, the security forces were seen dragging a body away from the protest site.
Mr. Sherif, so let me start by asking that President Hassan, right, began her term with promises of reform and reconciliation. What changed?
What changed is she has now been surrounded, it is alleged, by different interests who are pulling her in the direction of regression. She came in, she promised reform. Now she has made a 180-degree turn. Dennis, I just want to go back a little. She is sitting in the presidential seat of a man who I described earlier, I talked about earlier, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. And so if you hear Mwalimu in Swahili, Mwalimu basically means teacher. So Dennis, you're a teacher, you're a renowned teacher from the refugee camp. So you can be a Mwalimu, you deserve that title. And some people around here as well deserve that title. So Mwalimu Julius Nyerere led Tanzania through, from the fight for independence to his policy of Ujamaa and African socialism based on collectivism, based on national identity. Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, one of the things that he did was he introduced Swahili as the national language of Tanzania. So in addition to English, Swahili is a national language in Tanzania. So in Tanzania, you don't have this sort of, division along tribal lines or division along local languages and all these different things that you see in other parts of Africa. So the legacy of Mwalimu Julius Nyerere now is under siege, is under threat from a dictator. And so you ask the question, what changed? Greed, power. This is a new development, quite frankly, in the United Republic of Tanzania. Keep in mind that Tanzania is a conglomeration of two geographical entities, the island nation of Zanzibar and mainland Tanganyika. So Samia Suluhu Hassan is from Zanzibar. So it will be interesting to see all of these dynamics will play out. Keep in mind that there was a violent overthrow of the Arab elite in the ruling elite. The Sultan had to flee Zanzibar post-independent. So this is not good. And so whether or not she's been pulled in different directions by the conservative elements of her own party, she has to make the decision. She will be held accountable for the violence that's been unleashed on the Tanzanian people. And this is something that has to concern the AU. This is something that has to concern the region as well. But what is going on now, Dennis, is that it is reported that you have Ugandan troops and Kenyan security forces helping the Tanzanian security forces to squash the rebellion, to squash this protest, to suppress this protest. And this is very, very troubling for Tanzania and quite frankly the rest of Africa.
And Mr. Sherif, what most of us did not know is we all praise Magufuli, right? But Magufuli himself, he has some harsh hands. He squashed dissent, he jailed political prisoners and whoever was opposing him, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
that's what he was doing. So this is what. So when President Hassan came in after the death of Magufuli, people were expecting a lot. So was her early openness to civic dialogue, because she even unbanned other political parties, free some prisoners that were in jail. Was that early openness to dialogue, was it genuine, or it comes back to my question, what changed? Because she was the hope that something was going to be a turn from the past.
Dennis, what has history taught us? History has taught us that leaders who follow autocrats, dictators, sometimes they come in and they promise reform. And you have to also keep in mind that in that leadership, in those kinds of administrations, you have the reformists and you have the old guards who are trying to keep things as they were. We saw that in Liberia, didn't we? After the Tubman era, Tolbert was pulled in different directions. The progressives would tell you. Deacon Kalo was on here the other time, and he was saying these same things about President Tolbert. So Tolbert had these issues going on himself. So I bring that to bear on this issue in Tanzania, because to make an example, to show you an example that when these kinds of leaders come in, they are pulled in different directions. So keep in mind, she's from the island of Zanzibar. That's where she's from, and as I said, it's a coalition. It was a coalescence of Zanzibar and Tanganyika. So it could be that there are elements on the mainland who are now pushing to have things the way they were under Magufuli, because their interest is to keep things as they were, to keep the party in power. The Chama Mapinduzi has been in power for 48 years now, and so the old guards will want things to be the way they are. If there is a reform in the Tanzanian political ecosystem, the opposition was growing. The opposition, Chadema, the opposition at Wazalendo. Wazalendo in Swahili means patriots. So the party of patriots, Chama cha Wazalendo, Luhanga Mpina is the leader of that party, and he was a minister under John Magufuli. He himself has had trouble, under Magufuli. After Magufuli's death, he crossed over to the opposition. So a lot of these guys now who are members of the opposition were one-time members of the ruling party, the Chama Mapinduzi. So they are reformists now. These reformists are going against the old guards of the CCP. So it's a very, very difficult balancing act. But what she can do, and what she should have done, is to continue with reforms. But see, the thing is that if she continued along those lines, are they in her interest? So when people say, well, the leader was pulled, in different directions, as I'm saying now, as I'm, speculating that she was pulled in different directions, it is up to that leader to stand up for what is right, to stand up for reform. I think, again, I go back to the Liberian experience. We saw that in Liberia, where the leader at the time, William Tolbert, moved towards reform, moved towards making things different, a new era for, a new president in a new era. but somewhere along the way, he was then pulled by the conservatives in that regime to say your reforms are going too far, and they even threatened to overthrow him. So the dynamics, it's interesting to see what is going on in Tanzania. Miss Hassan is likely afraid of her own safety, her own job probably is on the line. But look, sometimes it will take, the boldness and leadership to do the things that others don't want you to do. So, because at the end of the day, it's the leader that will be judged, not the followers, not the people who pull you in all these different directions, as she has been pulled in the direction of regression. Quite frankly, this has shattered Tanzania's peace and stability, and for this reason, Tanzania has lost its innocence. Tanzania will never be the same again. That is, I hear people, there were people, every time that you watch and follow people. I mean, there were African Americans. People were going to Tanzania, and all they came out with a very impressive record of a place that was very peaceful and serene. That has been shattered by this dictator, Samia Suluhu Hassan.
Mr. Sherif, let's go again to the elections, right? That triggered. Let's talk a little bit about the elections, how they triggered this mass protest. As you said earlier, the opposition figures, were bad and all these different. So walk me through the process and how the people became so dissatisfied that this can be right. We have to rise up. And we've seen that something similar in Cameroon and also Africa. So let's walk through the election a little bit.
So basically, in the lead up to the election, so the opposition, had protested against, a call for electoral reform, and part of the reason was that the Elections Commission is predominantly handpicked by the president, members of the Supreme Court, different things of that nature. So there is an imperial presidency. We talk about imperial presidency in Liberia. Well, there's one in Tanzania as well. And so the Tanzanians didn't want that. The Tanzanians wanted a reform of the system that they have currently. And so the reason why Tunde Lissu is in jail is because of that. And Tunde Lissu has been charged with treason. Can you imagine an opposition who was really on the verge of giving Suluhu Hassan some trouble? He was arrested and put behind bars. And Tunde Lissu has vowed that he will continue the fight. As you show him right there, he is very determined to push forward with his agenda, for protesting against a dictatorship. Other leaders of the opposition have been banned. Journalists have not been allowed to cover these elections. Journalists were not allowed, to follow to cover the protests that ensue prior to the election. So before the election, there were pre-existing issues, and these pre-existing issues were never resolved until the election. So the opposition, for example, had called for a postponement of the election, and that was never done. The opposition had called for the release of political prisoners. That was never done. The opposition called for the inclusion of all members, people who are jailed, such as Tunde Lissu and others, to be included in the process so that this process is fair and transparent. That was never done. Instead, Suluhu Hassan created, it is alleged that, Suluhu Hassan's regime created a whole bunch of dozens of, individuals, parties, different things like that had no chance of winning against her. So they're coming up now with a number that many observers, quite frankly, has dismissed as a facade, as a joke. 98% of the votes for Suluhu Hassan. This is unheard of. This has to go in the Guinness Book of Records as one of the most rigged elections in the history of mankind.
All right. Let's go to the government response as a result. Right now, we have curfews, internet blackouts, so you can't get any news out of Tanzania. We also have military deployment. This is state security, right? Are these moves justified for state security or a violation of civil liberties?
They're not. Dennis, is interesting because for the first time in Tanzanian history, protesters, the citizens have not called on the military to intervene. In Liberia, what are we saying? No, keep the military people away, keep the soldier people away from the presidency. The soldiers are there to guard our democracy. The soldiers are there for, protection of lives and properties, right? The police and soldiers, basically the armed forces. That is your job. That's what we say in West Africa, at least in Liberia at this time. In Tanzania, what the protesters are saying, they're begging the military to take over. They beg the military. Protesters have gone to a military installation to beg the military to take over. But the Tanzanian military have not budged. They've not come in. So they are the key factor in this. If you want to know who holds the key now to the salvation of Tanzania in the eyes of the protesters, it's the military. The military needs to come in, according to the protesters, to take over from Samia Suluhu Hassan. So that is what's going on. It's very dangerous what's going on. Meanwhile, the military has not acted. The military has not really gone to the level of where, for example, in Madagascar, where the military came in and deposed the president. So it'll be interesting to see in the next few days. But something else is going on, as I mentioned earlier. You have now reports of Ugandan troops that have come in to bolster the Tanzanian forces. You have reports of Kenyan troops have come in to bolster the Tanzanian armed forces to suppress the protesters. So this is a very, very dangerous thing that's going on in Tanzania. All over Tanzania, in places like Dar es Salaam, which stands for Port of Peace. Now, instead of Port of Peace, is really a port of darkness, literally darkness, and the internet blackout, and electricity out. Meanwhile, the protesters are burning government buildings and stuff like that, in reprisal to the death and destruction that have been unleashed on peaceful protesters. It is alleged that hundreds have already been killed, according to opposition spokespeople in Tanzania. The United Nations is putting the number at a very low number. They're saying that they have 10, but what do they know, right? I mean, you sit in air-conditioned offices, you have nothing, you go nowhere, and you come out with a number like 10. It's actually should be more than that. It's somewhere in
the opposition saying 700.
700.
I think another group saying 100. The UN is saying 10.
Right. So as you can see, I mean, where the UN, where did they go? Where
And Mr. Sherif, I want to talk about any invisible hand. I mean, we saw in Cameroon that France has a hand in it. We see France also in Ivory Coast. When it comes to Tanzania, is there any international hand in the background, or is it the region? Because as I was reading, Rwanda doesn't want to say anything, or Uganda, Kenya, and all these people, because they are afraid that, okay, if we support the protesters, our own governments will be scrutinized, and we will have the same thing. So let's get on the side. So who's behind this? Is there any international hand behind it?
When you say international, you should also consider the regional actors. So internationally, therefore, the regional actors have hands in this, and we can understand why. Tanzania is surrounded by 7 or 8 other African countries. Dennis, half of them are not democracies. More than half of them have repressive regimes, even those who claim to have democracy. Look what happened in Mozambique last time. It is widely reported that the ruling party in Mozambique for the first time lost the election. But look at what they did. They put down that, the post-election protests in Mozambique. And now, all is quiet in Mozambique. The only other place where you've had peaceful transfer of power is Malawi and Botswana. The president of Botswana, the new leader of Botswana, just said that any president anywhere If you stay past 10 years, this means that you are useless. There's no use for you to stay past 10 years. This is a direct shot at those dictators like, Paul Biya, dictators like Samia Suluhu Hassan. So he is saying that. Now, you have other countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is, next door, which has their own trouble. And really the democracy there is really a fragile democracy at this time. You have Burundi and Rwanda. Those are not, we love Paul Kagame, okay, but that's not a real democracy. I mean, and then you have your friend Museveni in the region. You have Museveni in the region. Museveni has no interest in democracy. Museveni is about preserving his rule and his dynasty so that when he dies, his son can take over. So Museveni, if you will, is involved in this. Museveni is involved in this. It is alleged now that there are Tanzanian troops going in. There are Ugandan troops going into Boston, Tanzania. So yes, there are international forces at work. Kenya, which is a democracy, look at what President Ruto did to the protesters on 2 occasions now. He has murdered protesters. So President Ruto also has these autocratic tendencies. So their interest is not seeing that the protesters have the upper hand. So the protesters are really fighting against several regimes in the region. Their backs are to the wall. But then is what you have going on is that the protesters are not only Tanzanian youth, there are youth that are crossing the border from Kenya as well that are joining the protest. So it's not over here. It's far from over at this time.
So we're talking about it. Let's talk more about this regional dynamics and their response. The UN, for instance, called for investigations into the excessive force by the government, typical UN language. Right. Amnesty International condemned the crackdown, but regional bodies like the AU, the EAC, the East African Community, they all remain silent.
Yeah. So these are regional bodies that really, to me, the AU right now, it's a joke. So what they're going to do, okay, Amnesty International, start with Amnesty International. What can they do? A lot of what they do is they document, which is useful for a future trial of some of these dictators if they make it to court. Would that ever happen? We don't know. So they will issue condemnations, and that's all they can do. But when you look at organizations like the United Nations Human Rights Commission, the United Nations is our refugee agency, the United Nations as a body, the Security Council, is there something that they can say and do for the Tanzanian people? They should and they must. But the United Nations really at this time have no interest in seeing any stability in Africa. The United Nations has always been led, Dennis, by a powerful country who has had a certain interest in a certain country. Right now, the United States administration, so I say the United States, for example. So the United Nations, again, has been led. If you see that the United Nations get very proactive in a region, it's usually led by one of the so-called, not so-called, in reality, these 5 permanent members, right, who must take the lead. So the question is, who's taking the lead at this time? Who is going to say, is it Britain? Is it France? Is it the United States? Is it China? Who is going to take the lead now to say, we need to talk about Tanzania. We need to talk about Cameroon. Nobody is doing that because you know what? the United States at this time is not interested in these multilateral organizations. The United States is hands off under the Trump administration at this time. So there is nothing that the United Nations itself felt that they can do because, you know, there are funding issues with the United Nations. So there's a lot of things going on now that the United Nations is not able to act because in certain administrations we've seen where American leadership will make a difference. So let's say President Donald Trump gets up tomorrow morning and says, okay, we need to talk about Tanzania. What's going on over there is despicable. You're going to see right away how the United Nations is going to act. If Great Britain says that, okay, we need to do something about Tanzania, we need to do something about Cameroon, the United Nations is going to act. So in other words, what I'm saying is that if any member of the five, if any of the 5 permanent members do not do anything, the United Nations is not going to act. So what you have now, that I would say, that I said to the brothers and sisters in Cameroon, is that the people must continue to protest. The people must rise up. There are 70 million people in Tanzania. So if you put 2 to 3 million people in the streets of Dar es Salaam, in the streets of Dodoma, in the streets of Arusha, occupy these government offices, and literally move in to occupy parliament, to occupy the presidential mansion, which is the state house, overcome the security forces. What they're going to do, as she has done now, they're going to kill a lot of people. But how many people can she kill? Can she kill maybe 5,000 people? Can she kill 10,000 people? I don't know if she can do all of that. By the time you get to certain number, she is going to have to flee. And that is, that is what I think the Tanzanian people should do. They should take the destiny into their own hands, because the United Nations is not going to be out there for them. The AU already, we know the AU, it's very inept at this point in time in the history of the AU. So nothing is going to happen. The Tanzanian people need to take their own destiny in their own hands, as they are doing now.
So let's talk about East Africa. Just around talk about democracy. The last time I saw backsliding was in church, but now we are having a democratic backsliding in East Africa. How does this affect democracy, starting with East Africa, what Tanzania is up to now? How does that impact democracy in that region?
It's a regression. Remember in the 90s, early 90s, the wind of change was blowing across Africa, and all these different things were going on. So from North Africa to West Africa to Southern Africa, the wind of change was blowing across the continent, and part of that, what happened as a result, was the introduction of multi-party democracy. The party in Tanzania, the Chama Cha Mapinduzi Tanzania was a one-party state under Mwalimu Julius Nyerere. So in 1992 or 1995, somewhere from 1992 to 1995, Tanzania transformed to a multi-party state. The ruling party, the CCM, continues to win every election. There was no contention, no major contention until now. So I'm wondering if she didn't do all of this. It's very possible that she could have won elections just based on her reform agenda. So you didn't need all of this. You didn't need to repress the population in this manner. You didn't need to kill hundreds, according to opposition spokespeople, in this manner to be able to consolidate your rule. So this is troubling for the region. Dennis, you already don't have democracy in Uganda. Nothing in Rwanda to speak of. Burundi, there's nothing to speak of. So a regression in Tanzania, which is to me a gateway to East Africa, is a troubling sign for the rest of the region. These leaders I mentioned the other time, they're copycats. So somebody is going to look at the Tanzanian experience and copy that. So who's next now on the list? We already know that in Mozambique, the opposition was suppressed. Many protesters were killed. And, you saw in Cameroon what happened in Cameroon. A dictator, almost a dead man. Look, since the election was called for Paul Biya, he hasn't spoken. He hasn't been seen publicly.
He said the best is yet to come.
He hasn't been right. He hasn't spoken. He hasn't said anything. Samia Suluhu Hassan hasn't said much since she was declared as the president by 98% of the vote. First of all, there was no 90. The participation rate, according to the Tanzania Electoral Commission, was 87%. That is really far from the truth. But directly back to your question regarding what this does for the region, not only the region, this has a long-reaching repercussion for not only East Africa but the Central African region. And West Africa and other regions as well.
Let's talk about the media. We as independent media, we need to show these things. How has the media been under President Hassan and leading up to and during this time now?
President Samia Suluhu Hassan has suppressed the media. As you can see now, the internet is total internet blackout. She doesn't want anything to be reported, which is why the United Nations people sitting in their air-conditioned offices don't know what is going on. And they say, well, we heard 10. The actual number is really, really high. So one of the things that she's achieving now by stopping the foreign media, by stopping, media institutions from other countries from entering Tanzania, is to make sure that she controls the news outlet. If you as a dictator are able to control the information that gets out there, maybe you are able now to do things under the cover of darkness that's not going to be reported to the rest of the world. The good thing now is that social media is around. So all of what, a lot of what we're exposed to now are people, bloggers and people, different, independent outlets that are out there with their phones and stuff like that, and making sure that, the rest of us are informed and have some clue on what is going on. With the government, they want to keep everybody disinformed, and that's what she continues to do. And it's very dangerous because, a lot of people have already been killed in that country. This has never happened before in Tanzania. This is, as I mentioned earlier, this is new. This is really new for Tanzania. The stability of that country, the serenity, the kindness of these people has been shattered now. The legacy of Mwalimu Julius Nyerere now has been shattered. And this is a sad, sad day for Tanzania. This is a sad, sad day for Africa.
And talking about sad day for Africa, let's look at, there was a time in Africa that they were coups all over the place. It appears that we're going back into that era now. It's all stolen elections, dictators, and what have you. I thought we have passed that stage.
Right. I thought so too. I thought we've passed, especially after the 90s, with the democratic reforms and whatnot. But we are back to that. Dennis, you mentioned coups, military coups. These are also coup d'etat. These are civilian coup d'etat. Don't forget, you have Alassane Ouattara, whom we have not even talked about. Or perhaps we'll talk about him tomorrow also. He has staged a coup d'etat, a civilian coup d'etat. Paul Biya, old 95-year-old son Paul Biya, has staged a civilian coup d'etat. Samia Suluhu Hassan has staged another coup d'etat. Who's next on that list? Mozambique, the current president of Mozambique has staged a civilian coup d'etat in my book. Who's next on the list? Who's next on the list? We know Yoweri Museveni. That's what he's been doing all along since he's been president. I had not graduated high school when Yoweri Museveni overthrew, Basilo Okello, in a rebellion that took him from Rwanda to the capital, Kampala. And this is, and this is what's going on. So now we took one step forward in the 90s, and we're taking 200 steps backwards now. Again, this is sad for Africa.
What is responsible?
It's a great question. Was there well, I don't think there was a willingness to move forward. Right? There was no willingness to move forward. So people did not want to move forward. You had a one party regime for a long time, and the idea of a multi-party system was like an imposition from the outside on the African people, on the African leaders. And so they went along because that was what was imposed on them at the time, from their understanding of it, from how they're reacting to, from how they reacted at the time. And now I'll give you an example. You'll say, how did they react then? Mobutu Sese Seko back in 1991, 1992, when the Liberian Civil War was going on. So in Zaire at the time, now Democratic Republic of Congo, during their conference, Mobutu declared that, he was no longer going to be the leader of the MPR. His party was called the Mouvement Populaire de la Révolution, Popular Movement of the Revolution. And so he said, I'm no longer your leader. I'm stepping down from now on. And then a month later, after he appointed a prime minister, a month later or so, Mobutu came back and said, you know what, this sovereign conference, we can't do this now. I'm not doing it. We're done. We're done. And he had his military leader, he had his military commander come on television to warn the opposition. Mobutu didn't move forward with the recommendations of the sovereign conference. You know what ended up happening? A civil war that dethroned Mobutu, and the sick old man had to die. He had to flee and die in Morocco. There are other examples of African leaders who did not really embrace multi-party democracy. They reluctantly implemented it just because that was what was going on at the time. And so now, to me, this regression is even long overdue because these guys were never interested. I mean, Museveni came in, he wasn't interested in multi-party, so he will tell you that. And the thing about people like Museveni is really not stupid. He's very aware. I listened to a speech that he gave. He knows a lot of history. It looks like he's very educated. But why would a man like that continue to rule over his people for maybe, 4 or 5 decades? Right, and Rwanda is no different, right? So we have that. We love Museveni, and we love Kagame, but he's doing the same thing. So this regression that you're seeing now, to me, was already in the minds of some of these leaders.
And to that, Dave is asking that those who are suppressing and repressing the people, they were once, the freedom fighters. They were one of the opposition leaders calling for reforms, right?
Yes.
I mean, see, and even if you go back to the days of Robert Mugabe, I mean, these kind of people will come and they don't see the need for change, for reform.
Yeah.
So when you say they were not ready or they didn't really want to, I'm looking at others who were the reformers who were calling for these changes, and now see what they're doing.
It was Dennis, you called out demagoguery. There's a lot of demagoguery going on. Oh, I want this. This is what I want to do. Look, Mugabe was good friends with Joshua Nkomo and Edgar Takeri and those guys for the freedom of Zimbabwe. And no sooner as independence, Zimbabwe gained independence, what did Mugabe do? They were engaged in a bitter conflict with both men. Both Edgar Takeri and Joshua Nkomo had to flee for their lives. And these guys, they are people in Matabidi land, where Nkomo is from, all these different places. People were murdered by Robert Mugabe. Although I love Robert Mugabe as as a freedom fighter and all of these different things that he stood for, but he committed a lot of atrocities against supporters of Joshua Nkomo and the opposition to his rule. So no, these guys were, a lot of them, what they were doing was, engaging in demagoguery. They were not serious about, any sort of multi-party system. What did Sekou tell you last time? Sekou told you that, these people see themselves as the big chief, the chief of the village, right? How dare you question my authority? I am the leader. Sekou said that, the former, the king of France, he said, I am the time, c'est moi qui ai le temps. And what is going on is that a lot of that is going on in across Africa. I am the chief. Mobutu reminded in one of the interviews, Mobutu reminded the journalist that when the journalist asked him, why did you have to hang your people? You hang 3 of your former government officials, including the former prime minister. He said, look, these guys, the way these guys talk about me, they try to undermine me. We don't do that in Africa. I am the chief. And so they said, but what does that mean? He told them again, he reminded them, he said, I am the chief. What you guys do in Europe, we don't do that here. I am the chief. I say the last word, and not these guys. So a lot of these people,
right,
think this way.
So it comes to now about culture, and maybe democracy is foreign. Dave is also asking, do you think, considering the culture of Africa, the value and social systems, multi-party democracy, the one we're talking about now in Tanzania, is it a suitable choice of governance for our people? Or we need to find something else? Maybe this was imposed, as you said earlier, and so we don't know how to deal with it. It may not match our values, our systems, and the way we operate.
It's interesting. It's a very interesting question. For me personally, I will, democracy is something that we should embrace. Me personally, I don't want to sit there and see a leader like Paul Biya. What utility does he have at this point in time? He is the big chief. So is that what we want? The big chief must sit there and die? Is that what we want? Do we want, a Museveni, the big chief, does no wrong? Do we want a Samia Suluhu Hassan, people that will kill and sit there, the big chief? Do we want that? Or do we want to give opportunities to the next generation? Why is it then, if we say that the chief must reside in the presidential palace till he or she dies, then what are we telling the young people? What are we telling the young generation? You have no place here till I die. Then you can come in. I have to sit at this table. I own this place. You have no right to say anything. What are we telling the next generation that is coming after us? All these leaders, all these demagogues that go around talking about the youth, talking about progress. There is nothing progressive about a lot of these people. What is progressive? If you're not giving way to the new generation to show you what they have, maybe something different. Maybe people need something different. Then it's if you're on the field of play, if you get tired, maybe you were, I don't know where you were, number 6, what number you played. But if you got,
I'm a striker. I'm a right wing, number 7.
if your coach, if you were in the game and at some point you got tired, you had to be substituted, right? In the soccer that we love in Africa, or the football that we love in Africa, there's a reason why there are substitution. You're not producing anymore. You're not running hard. You're not scoring. You're not doing the thing. You're not defending. When you first enter the game, the things that you did before, you're not doing them now. So I have to substitute you. There's subs on the bench here. Maybe let's infuse new blood into this, so that our offense can pick up, so that our defense can be solid. So let's apply the same logic to our political atmosphere. Let's bring in new people. Let's infuse new blood into this and see what happens. The reason why we're stagnated, I will argue, Dennis, is because of these. One of the reasons is because we have these old leaders, these old, very old presidents, these people who overstayed their time. Look at Alassane Ouattara in Cote d'Ivoire. The people are saying, his supporters are saying that, oh, it's about stability. That's all we need. That's not the only thing that you need. It's one of the things, but that's not the only thing you need. And the stability of which you're talking about, you're lucky to be stable at this time. That is even more scary because that's in our region. Alassane Ouattara lied to the Ivorian people. He lied to the world that he was going to relinquish power to his prime minister. And he appointed two guys who were supposed to run. Miraculously, the two guys died. These guys died. Then there was, so this is, it's really mind-boggling that we have this going on. So no, I don't want us, because of the likes of Alassane Ouattara, because of the likes of Samia Suluhu Hassan, so that we can go back to say, maybe this is not working for us. Why don't we go back to a system where we have these chiefs that will sit there and rule us till they die? Sometimes even the chief, can run out of ideas. That is Paul Biya, my example that I keep going back to. He has run out of ideas. He ran out of ideas 30 years ago. This man, who was declared the winner, he hasn't been seen in public. He hasn't acknowledged his alleged victory. He hasn't been seen. He's nowhere to be found. Maybe he's back in the hospital in Switzerland. Nobody knows where Paul Biya is at this time. Suluhu Hassan, it was alleged that she fled to Uganda, but I think that's unfounded. I think she's still there. We know that we've heard that Ugandan troops have crossed the border into Tanzania and they're protecting her. But you can only protect a dictator for some time. You cannot protect a dictator all of the time. We've seen time and time and again examples even in our own Liberia.
And that's what I'm coming to. What lesson can we learn, in Africa and also in Liberia from what's happening in Tanzania? What lesson can Liberia and other African countries learn from the democratic backsliding in Tanzania?
The lesson that we can learn is that we have to solidify our institutions so that we don't have this sort of imperial presidency, and we have that in Liberia. So I'm really afraid that we may see something similar in Liberia. Look, imagine. Let me backtrack for a second. If Ellen Johnson Sirleaf had done this that Samia Hassan is doing now, what would people be saying? Ellen Johnson could have stayed there till she died in office. She had the support. She had the support to win elections after elections. She chose to go with the constitutional mandate. The constitutional mandate placed 2 terms on her, and she respected that, and we respect that. Next, the election after Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Joseph Boakai went to court. He lost in the court system, and Joseph Boakai said, I respect the court. I respect whatever they said, and I'm defeated. The next election, George Weah, after most of the votes were counted, he looked at the numbers. He conceded defeat. So we have something good going on in Liberia. But that is also now, Dennis, under threat because of what is going on in Tanzania, because of what is going on in Cameroon, because of what has gone on in Cote d'Ivoire. I am at this time here to tell you, Dennis, instead of learning a lesson to be very careful, I think that Liberia is going to go in the other direction. I'd like to be proven wrong on this. I really, really, really love to be proven wrong on this, but these leaders are copycats, and they're going to copy the example of a Paul Biya. They're going to copy the example of a Samia Suluhu Hassan. And next thing you know, we will be in trouble. They're going to copy the example of Alassane Ouattara. If Ouattara can do it and sit there, an 85-year-old man can sit there, a 95-year-old man, a dying old man, a woman who's, a dictator can sit there and do this kind of thing. I think the rest of the continent is going to go in a direction that you and I don't want it to go.
Hi, my name is Addie Tyler from Pennsylvania, and you're watching Focus on Liberia.
And if you're watching Focus on Liberia and enjoying what we are doing, please put your comments in the comment section. Tell us that we're doing quite well. Even God loves praises, so we don't shy away from being praised. And also, you want to be part of the conversation, you can call the number that is on your screen now. That's 605-313-6004. The code is 791-403 #. Again, the number to call 605-313-6004. The code is 791-403 #. We are talking about Tanzania. Mr. Sherif, we also, which we may not talk about tonight, but there are other elections that are pending, that are coming up. Benin, first of all, before Benin, we have Guinea-Bissau. I think it's in November.
Yes.
We start today. And Benin, that's next year, April of 2026. And Ethiopia, June of 2026. So there are still elections. Should we be afraid of another Samia?
Yeah. You forgot Guinea. You forgot Guinea. Guinea is coming up this year.
Exactly. Guinea, right. Our neighbors.
Right. It's coming up as well. But look, Guinea-Bissau, just recently there was an alleged coup attempt. So Guinea-Bissau is still very unstable, even though they are a democracy. But the Guinea-Bissau democracy is also under threat because of the constant interference of the military, and because you have leaders who have not responded to the needs of the people of Guinea-Bissau. And so that's a very, very fragile democracy. It'll be interesting to see what they do in the next few months. And Benin is coming up. Benin is very interesting because the former president of Benin is also trying to contest, and the current president of Benin, who says that he's not going to contest anymore, but he's still very involved in the political, in undermining, the opposition, trying to ensure that, members of the opposition are not registered. So they had a meeting a couple of weeks ago in the presidential palace where the former president and the current president met. I hope that those kinds of discussions continue. And I'm hopeful, though, for Benin. I think of all these countries, Benin looks still promising because the current president said that he's not going to run again. So that, to me, is a sign that anytime you don't have an incumbent, then at least there's a chance that something good can come out of that. The opposition will stand a chance. The only troubling thing for Benin is that now he's banning the opposition, the main opposition party. And so that's going on in Benin. And Guinea is coming up. Guinea, the young military leader of Guinea, it is widely speculated that he's going to be running for president. Again, Guinea is interesting. Why? Because you had an old man who took over, did his term, 2 terms of office. Alpha Condé did 2 terms of office. He ruled for 10 years. At the expiration of year 10, he then decided to change the constitution to extend the presidential term of office, to restart. Remember when Sekou said that, these people reset themselves, these old guys? That's what Alpha Condé did. He reset. And when they asked his people, one of his spokespeople said, well, everything that we did, no, he himself said, everything that we did I couldn't change the constitution at the time because we had COVID. We had to deal with I think he said Ebola. I'm sorry, say Ebola. Yeah, we had Ebola. I had to deal with Ebola. And then the other time I tried to do something, then COVID came. I mean, so cynical. So cynical. So he stole that election. And what happened is his military leader from several miles away, and this guy is, very well trained. He took his people, several miles away. He put these guys in an armored car and trucked them down to Conakry and took over. And, that's the Guinea story. An election is coming up now. And then they've moved the presidential term in Guinea from, it was 5 years. Alpha Condé moved it to 6 years. Now this guy has moved it to 7 years. Who do you blame? Alpha Condé, right? Alpha Condé, obviously. He said he was supposed to be the Nelson Mandela of West Africa, but now look at what he did. And he's sitting in exile somewhere.
We were in Guinea when he was the main opposition leader, man. And he was riding, this professor is coming, and everything was so promising.
You remember. Even
the babies, they could go pay.
Yes. Look, I have my sister, when there was a riot going on in Zerikore somewhere, and some parts, and my sister said, the people, one of my sisters who's there, it said the people want to kill us. The people, I said, y'all got to stop voting for this man, Alpha Condé. Y'all are the people that are making this guy president. Y'all got to stop voting for this man. He's not good. And I think my sister didn't like that I said that. But they realized later on when he got overthrown, because I was very happy with the outcome of what happened to him. So these old dictators, like Alassane Ouattara, like, what are you doing? This is his 4th term. And I think that we have regressed so much in Africa.
I think it's his 2nd term, because the first 2 terms he reset. What structural safeguards now can prevent similar democratic erosions like what we are saying in Tanzania and Ivory Coast and Cameroon? But what can we do to prevent those kind of things?
What can we do is, again, very important. The people themselves need to safeguard their democracy. Nobody will do it for you. The international community, people always sit around and say, we're waiting for, the United Nations. We're waiting for the AU. We're waiting for France to say something. We're waiting for America. No, the people themselves have to rise up, have to be the keeper of their own democracy, of their own system. If you love your country, you have to safeguard your democracy, which means you have a people who are willing to protest. You have the people who are willing, when the ballots are being counted, you must have people who are willing to spend sleepless nights to count, to serve as observers. You must have people who are willing, if there's any attempt to steal the vote, you must have people who are willing to say no. Because then is sometimes what I found is that even with the Constitution, you have these oligarchs, you have these old guys who will come back and change the provisions of those same Constitution. You think in Tanzania they didn't have provisions for, a free and fair election? They do. Mwalimu Julius Nyerere put all these things, did a lot of good things. And his legacy is a legacy of civility among the people. That has now been shattered. So it is up to the people of Tanzania to rise up to restore that legacy, the legacy of unity and calmness, the legacy of honesty. One thing that I have been told about the people of Tanzania is that they are honest. They are good people. And so they have to rise up and restore that legacy. If that's not done, then we cannot depend on any outside forces to come in and restore our democracy. We can't even depend on the safeguards anymore, the constitutional safeguards. Because again, what did I say last time? These leaders have put themselves above the Constitution, and that is what's going on.
This is we all, even right here on Focus on Labrador, when they see all men, they say, where are the ladies? There's a lot
Yes.
of hope in
Yes.
the female leadership, especially for those
Yes.
of us who came from a family of women.
Yes.
You know, I was blessed with 11 sisters. So
Oh
I come
wow.
from a family of women. So
Oh wow.
I love the female leadership, and I've
Yes.
been supporting women leadership.
Yes.
Is the rise of female leadership in Africa being undermined by the authoritarian tendency of our sister in Tanzania, or
I would say,
or it's gender irrelevant in this one?
yeah,
Sometimes people, when they do it, they say, "Oh, they're doing this to me because I'm a woman."
yes.
So these old guys, are they trying to, kind of muzzle her because she's a female? All this kind of thing around women, sometimes they become a touchy subject. But I want us to go there.
Yeah, let's go there. Why not? She has set a bad example. Dennis, I was in a social media space with some East Africans, people from Zimbabwe, Ethiopia, Kenya, and all these different places, and we were discussing. The discussion was about leadership in Africa. And when I had the opportunity to speak in that group, they allowed me to say something. When I had the opportunity, and when I told them I was from Liberia, one of the moderators said, "Oh God, you guys have Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. We love her. We love her." This is like a year ago. I'm telling you. The lady said, "We love her. She's a role model for us." The lady that she said she's a role model for us. I mean, people have differences with her. I have, other people have. Okay. And I'm not sitting here trying to, you know, whitewash, every bad thing that she did. I'm just reporting back to you what I heard other Africans say about Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. Okay. And to me, she respected that term limit that's set for 2 terms. So she respected that. When it comes to Suluhu Hassan, what she's doing, what if Ellen had done that? Dennis, I had the same feeling. I had the feeling that, you know, um, women were usually kind leaders. I had that feeling several years ago. I said, women will never be dictators. So I'm safe with a woman president. Okay. Um, so I said that before Suluhu Hassan, of course. This now has changed a lot of that for me. What has happened in Tanzania, I am going to be brutally honest, has changed a lot of that for me. This is only one person, but it doesn't, I guess we can say it does not matter. You can be a woman, you can be a man, a dictator is just a dictator. Okay, so let's take all the labels away. So now we're going to say everyone is in the same basket, both male and female. It doesn't matter. Male and female politician. It does not matter at this point. You can be a woman and you can be a dictator. You can be a man and you can be a dictator. Okay. Our sister, as you call her, has let us down. Those of us who believe that female leadership, is the best thing, and they're kind and all these different things. No. So Hulu Hassan has told us that that's not the case.
Maybe I'm biased, but I really find it hard to believe that this this lady.
I know
I just want to
because
blame the men around her because
Dennis, don't do that. Don't do that.
I'm sorry.
don't,
I'm just letting
don't
my
do that.
feelings be out there.
I'm not going to accept that. I'm not going to
I
accept.
know, but let
But
me see what Riverside Pro had to say. Mr. Abraham Vinton is on the line. Riverside Pro, what says thou?
Yeah, thank you very much. This is a great program. Thank you for what you do. All your network program are great.
Thank you.
I'm a loyal follower, even though I'm not getting no prize for it. But anyway, so I got two questions. So to the host and to you too, Dennis, how likely is integrate into such situation like Tanzania in terms of third term or fourth term, considering that we already gone through those periods of the TWP, 27 and 28 years, then we had the Dole one, and we already had suffered tremendously. So how likely, because Tanzania, the only crisis I know they went through was they and that Uganda thing, the raid on Uganda when they threw Idi Amin. Otherwise, I don't know about any crisis that they have gone through like Liberia has done. So how likely, because I heard the whole saying that we are getting closer to that. So how likely that we disintegrate into similar situations that the Ivory Coast and other people go in? That's my first question. And my second question has to do with Trump. With this whole Trump keep floating this third term around, do you guys think it will kind of empower African leaders? Because it is becoming frequent. At first they say, well, he will do it, he will not do it, but then he just came up with it. So do you think African leaders are listening a bit? If the world greater superpower, they try to do it, why can't we do it? So how likely is it to influence African leaders to kind of be emboldened by this whole third term thing? That's my two questions. Thank you for having me, guys.
Thank you. Mohamed?
Yeah, so to the last question, a lot of the African leaders, even if they don't say it, they look up to these international powers, powers like the United States, France, and, Great Britain, different countries like that. It's always, an example, when there was a summit, the summit in which Trump said that Mr. Boakai spoke good English. Mr. Boakai was not the only president in that meeting. The president of Gabon, Brice Oligui, was also part of that meeting. When Mr. Brice Oligui went back home, what was he wearing? He was wearing a Make America Great Again hat in Libreville, Gabon. That's what he was wearing. Not Make Gabon Great Again, but Make America Great Again hat. That's what he wore in Gabon, in Africa. What I'm saying here is a lot of these African leaders, even if they don't say it, they look at the United States. They look at these, foreign powers, to the chagrin of many other conscious Africans, but they look up to these great powers to take their clue. If this is going on in America, maybe we can do something like this.
Yeah.
But to be honest and to be fair to, that question, or the Trump administration perhaps, is that, Ouattara started his third term. Ouattara started his before even Trump got in office. So there's no Trump influence, on people like, Ouattara. There's no Trump influence on people like Paul Biya. Paul Biya started his way, way back, decades ago, when Trump was never in office. So no, that's not really, really going to hold, although I get the question. I get the idea behind it, and there may be some influence. But no, you can also cite examples where leaders have overstayed in office, just by doing things that the way they want to do it and not influenced by any outside powers. There are also, what you're not going to discount is that there's also influence, from, other colonial powers. Maybe these colonial powers are influential in them overstaying, overstaying, right? Like in Ivory Coast, it is alleged that, Ouattara has support from France, so he's able to stay. So it's a possibility. But some of these presidents, they've been there long before Trump took office.
Then his first question was the likelihood for Liberia to degenerate into the chaos we see in Tanzania.
It's really my fear, and I'm not going to discount that. I'm not going to dismiss that, I should say, because last time, what were we talking about? We were talking about the removal of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, illegal removal of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, who is a member of the opposition party. All of this, to me, is setting the groundwork for a unity party retention of the presidency. So when you remove the speaker, when you are dominant in the House, when you do all these different things in the lead up to election, I think more is to come. What I think the unity party is contending with now is whether Bwaka is going to run in 2029 or Cohn is going to run. Cohn has no signal yet that Bwaka is not going to run. Cohn has started looking like a candidate, but he has not gotten any signal from his boss. So he has to stay put. But whoever goes, I think that they're looking at these examples very critically. These guys are copycats. African leaders are. Most, leaders are. So they're looking at these events in different places very critically. And I won't be surprised if they copy similar things come 2029. What is going to happen if this happens in Liberia? If a Paul Biya example happens in Liberia, if a Samia Suluhu Hassan's example happens in Liberia, there might be a day of protests. And then what happens? The police get out there, the army gets out there, they shoot some tear gas, they get overwhelmed, they shoot some live rounds and quiet the protests, and it's over. And then they're going to talk about reconciliation. They're going to go to, some pavilion. They're going to go somewhere and talk about reconciliation. Talk about let bygones be bygones. And before you know it, they've stolen your election from you, and you're not waking up to do anything. Because what's happening in Tanzania now, with the young people rising up to protest for days, that never happens in Liberia. That's never going to happen in Liberia. History has told us that has never happened in Liberia. The only time one of the only time in Liberia where people rose up against the oligarchy was in 1979. So in 79 when that happened, that was a mass protest of historic proportion. Nothing like that. Nothing similar to that. I don't think that I can recall that has ever happened in Liberia. So I'm afraid that, because the Liberians are not going to rise in the way they should to claim that democracy. So if this happens in Liberia, it will be sad, but there is a possibility that this can happen.
I think it's unlikely. We're giving Mr. Sherif some yeah, I think it's unlikely, and I think things will really get bad. But for any president to say they're going to go for a third term or fourth term,
no, Bwaka will be doing second term as an 85-year-old man. So what is preventing him? The Constitution does not prevent him from going for re-election. What is preventing him from stealing that election? He can steal the election. Okay. And what is the Liberian people going to do? You get in the street and you say you're angry and you protest for 2 days, and they send out the police and shoot tear gas and rubber bullets. And if they get overwhelmed, as I said, they fire live rounds. I mean, they've done that in the past. They'll fire live rounds, and then what you have people dying. Oh yes, one person was killed over here. We got 2 deaths over here, 3. Okay, people get off the street, and now the president and the opposition, they go somewhere. They go in some building, some pavilion, and they're going to talk peace. They're going to talk about let bygones be bygones, and this would never happen again. And then you have. Okay, let's fast and pray, and then there'll be a fast and prayer day, and then it's over. It's over. So Dennis, this is all these examples. We're not just sitting out here as FOL with this kind of information, rich and diverse information that we're giving our people from Cameroon to Tanzania and next to Ivory Coast. We're not just doing this for informational purposes. We're doing this also for educational purposes. This is a pedagogy, Dennis, because you are a Malemo. And I want you to know that what I'm saying here, I can conjecture that in Liberia in 2029, something undemocratic is going to happen. And it will be in the direction of committing fraud and excesses. Because these guys are looking at the example of Paul Biya. They're looking at the example of a Samia Suluhu Hassan. They're looking at these examples. They're looking at the example of a Alassane Ouattara. Who has condemned Ouattara now? He's sitting there, a very old man, okay, who has stolen another election. He barred Gbagbo. He barred this old man. Maybe Gbagbo didn't even have a chance. But why don't you let him compete? So he barred all these other potential candidates that would have been headache for him. And then who goes through? Gbagbo's wife. Gbagbo's wife goes through. Other candidates that are no threat. You see, that woman has been on the side of Alassane Ouattara for a long time. Simone Gbagbo. Simone Heive, they call her now. She's gone back to her maiden name. Simone Heive has been on Alassane Ouattara's side since Ouattara took her out of jail. So I guess, if you will now, this is probably one of the reasons why the man didn't want to have anything to do with her when he came back from jail.
Yeah.
And so this woman has betrayed this man. You go into a coalition, literally, with Alassane Ouattara to destroy Ivorian democracy. And that is what's going on, because what she did was she gave him validity. Ouattara didn't need that validity. Boycott the damn election, and you, the patriotic forces, and you get together and protest the election. Protest this election all over the country. But now Mrs. Simone Heive and others have given Alassane Ouattara the validity that she needed, or claiming that, well, I had opposition candidates, okay? I had Simone Gbagbo over here. I had this other person over here. So yes, there were opposition. So when they ask her, then when they ask him, that's what he's going to say. But it was a fraudulent process. Why do you have to ban, okay, Mr. Gbagbo? Dennis, you know that during Alassane Ouattara's first term, I was not a Gbagbo supporter. I was a Alassane Ouattara supporter.
Yeah.
Alassane Ouattara supporter. I argue with people online for this, this man. I argue with people. But you see, what I am true to the Constitution. I am a constitutionalist. I respect the rule of law and the administration of justice. That's the kind of advocate I am. That's the kind of analyst I am. So no, I'm not. I have not been with him since all those two prime ministers just died mysteriously, and now you're going to come in and then reinsert yourself. I mean, this is a joke. And so the Liberian leaders are paying attention to this, and they are watching this. So I'm afraid that these copycats are going to copy a bad example from a man now who, even though he says that he has grown the Ivorian economy, but that's not the only thing that we need. We need you to be the Nelson Mandela of West Africa. We need you to be a great leader. We need you to be an example of the African masses. We need you to be an example of the youth. But you are none of that now. You have failed. He has failed all of us. He has failed the Ivorian people. His supporters, the tribal people who think this is about tribalism, this is about Mandingo people over this people. It's not about that. It shouldn't be about that. It should be about avoiding democracy and how you keep that democracy.
Thank you.
Right now, it's in peril.
Exactly. That's why it is. Oh, Mr. Sherif, it's been a wonderful time discussing these things with you. And to our people, everyone who's watching or who's going to watch later, what we are doing is we're trying to show you what's going on in other parts of Africa and what lessons can we learn from what's going on and apply to our own democracy. Because democracy is not just there; it has to be nurtured. For citizens to participate, they have to be informed. If you have an informed citizenry, they are able to participate in the democracy and make it work. It is not something that they gave to you and it just go by itself. You have to work on it and make it work. And that, what the other day we're talking about civic engagements, because as I said, we are always reacting to the policy. We are not driving the narrative. Okay, we even wait for politicians to come and tell us what they would do for us. We are not saying these are the things we care about, and let's see who can do this. We first decide who the person is, and then we try to fit them into what we want, and that's too late. But again, thank you for shedding lights on most of these things. We're going to look at articles next that's coming up. Keep tuned, and we're also going to, keep our radar on these other elections that are coming up. And I'm trying to arrange for the ambassador of Burkina Faso. We want to see what really is going on in Burkina Faso.
Yeah.
So talk to the people and see what we can learn from it. Let me get your closing comments as we wrap up.
Thank you, Dennis. And so, what has obtained in Tanzania with this process and with the masses, the onslaught on the poor masses of Tanzania, the onslaught on the youth of Tanzania, is incongruent with the values that Mwalimu Julius Nyerere stood for. This is incongruent with African values. And this is the thing that Samia Hassan is doing now, because it is alleged that she's been pulled in all directions by those who want reform and the old guards who want to regress, who want to keep things as they are. They have won the day now. But I will tell you this, no repression is permanent. She can have her day now, but one day, as we say, as my people say, your time will come. One day, your time will come. Alassane Ouattara, one day, your time will come. You suppress your own people. You kill people every election cycle. You ban the opposition for what? Democracy, election is not the only thing. When you talk about democracy, it's not just holding elections. So these guys, what they're doing is they're holding token elections, just to clear the calendar. Okay, in 2029, we're going to have election in December, or when that time comes, they hold these elections and they cross that off just to clear the calendar. It's more than just clearing the calendar as an incumbent. As an incumbent, what you need to do is to ensure that those safeguards are in place. It's to ensure that when your term is up, it's up. It's to ensure that when you are defeated, that you go out there and acknowledge defeat, as George Weah did in Liberia. And today, we continue to congratulate Mr. Weah as a fine example of a Liberian who did the right thing. And we want other African leaders to follow that example, to follow that shining example, because Africa is our home. Dennis, one thing I didn't mention is that, archaeologically, Tanzania is the cradle of civilization. This is where archaeologists in the Oduva Gorge, where archaeologists find the fossils and the human remains of people who live in that region 2 million years ago. Because, according to archaeologists, then Tanzania, this is where human evolution started. So this is a very, very important part of the world that we're talking about. And this is what a politician in Samia Hassan is just shattered the image of a country in one single election. These guys, and women, these men and women don't even think about the importance of what they have to deal with. History is on your side. You have this history. You have president. You have all these different things to be a great leader. You have the opportunity to be a great leader. Instead, you chose the path of rejecting that. You chose the path of repression and suppression and killing members of the opposition, putting members of the opposition behind bars for years on trumped up charges. But you know, as I mentioned earlier, repression can only last so long. Nothing, even repression, lasts forever. And whether it's Paul Biya in Cameroon, Samia Suluhu Hassan in Tanzania, or any other leader that have suppressed the African people, your time for reckoning will come. Thank you.
On that note, I say thank you, Mr. Sherif. I want to thank our producer in the background. I want to thank our viewers and even those who will watch later. Today is the 1st of November. The year is going to an end. So if you like this, these videos and what we are doing at Focus on Liberia, please don't hesitate to drop us a line, focusonliberia@gmail.com. And if your pocketbook or your wallet can allow, please donate to us so that we can keep these things going. There's a lot that goes on in the background for us to bring you this informative, educative program. So let's help us to keep the lights on. We never close a broadcast without playing our song that says, "We are all Liberians." What do you think what is going on in Tanzania is likely or unlikely to happen in Liberia? We are all Liberians. Let us do our very best to make our country the glorious land of liberty. Amanda.
Way too.
We are Liberians. Liberia is our home. Liberian people. Liberia.